Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Darius woke up, his eyes opened as consciousness slowly crept in. Something felt off, but in his groggy state, he couldn't quite put his finger on it. As he stretched, the silky fabric of his nightgown rustled against his skin. Wait, nightgown? Darius bolted upright, his heart racing as he looked down at himself. He was wearing a pale pink nightgown adorned with delicate lace trim. This couldn't be right. He blinked hard, willing the bizarre sight to disappear. Panic rising in his chest, Darius scrambled out of bed, his feet hitting the plush carpet. He spun around, taking in his surroundings: pastel walls, a vanity covered in makeup and perfume bottles, posters of boy bands. This wasn't his room, it was his sister's. "What is going on?" he muttered, his voice coming out higher than usual. He stumbled to the full-length mirror on the closet door, dreading what he might see. His reflection stared back at him, wide-eyed and pale. It was still him, thank God, but dressed in his sister's pajamas. The nightgown hung loosely on his frame, and a pair of matching pink shorts peeked out from underneath. Darius ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of the situation. Had he sleepwalked? Was this some elaborate prank? He needed to get back to his own room and change before anyone saw him like this. He crept to the door, pressing his ear against it to listen for any movement in the hallway. Hearing nothing, he slowly turned the knob and peeked out. The coast was clear. Darius darted across the hall to his own room, shutting the door behind him with a soft click. Relief washed over him as he leaned against the door, surrounded by the familiar posters and clutter of his own space. He moved to his dresser, eager to change out of the embarrassing outfit. But when he yanked open the top drawer, his blood ran cold. Instead of his usual t-shirts and boxers, he found neatly folded blouses and bras. He slammed the drawer shut and tried the next one. Skirts. The one below that? Dresses. No, Darius muttered, growing frantic as he searched every drawer and his closet. All of his clothes were gone, replaced by a wardrobe fit for his sister. A knock at the door made him jump. "Honey, are you up? Breakfast is ready," his mother called. Darius froze, unsure how to respond. He couldn't let her see him like this. Yeah, Mom, I'll be down in a minute," he called back, trying to keep his voice steady. "All right, don't be too long. You don't want to be late for school." School? The thought sent a fresh wave of panic through him. How was he supposed to go to school dressed like this? He had to talk to his mom to figure out what was going on. Taking a deep breath, Darius steeled himself and opened the door. He padded down the stairs, the unfamiliar sensation of the nightgown swishing against his legs with each step. In the kitchen, his mother stood at the stove, her back to him as she flipped pancakes. "There you are," she said, turning to face him. "I was beginning to think you'd fallen back asleep." Darius waited for her reaction, for the shock and confusion to register on her face, but it never came. She simply smiled at him as if nothing was amiss. "Mom," he started, his voice shaking. "Something weird is going on. All my clothes are gone, and I woke up in this." He gestured to the nightgown. His mother's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about, sweetie? Those are your pajamas." Darius gaped at her. "No, they're not. These are girls' clothes. I'm not supposed to be wearing this." She set down the spatula and approached him, concern etched on her face. "Are you feeling all right? Did you have a bad dream?" "This isn't a dream, Mom. Look at me." Darius was on the verge of tears now, frustration and fear overwhelming him. His mother placed a cool hand on his forehead. "You don't feel warm. Maybe you're just stressed about that big test today. Why don't you go get dressed? I laid out your favorite suit on your bed." "Suit?" Darius opened his mouth to protest again, but the words died in his throat. His mother was already turning back to the stove, humming softly as if their conversation had never happened. Feeling dazed, Darius trudged back upstairs. True to his mother's word, a suit was laid out on his bed. But it wasn't the kind of suit he was expecting. A white blouse, a fitted blazer in navy blue, and a matching pencil skirt stared back at him. He sank onto the edge of the bed, head in his hands. This had to be a dream, a vivid, insane dream. He pinched himself hard, wincing at the pain. Not a dream, then. With shaking hands, Darius reached for the clothes. If this was real, and he was having a hard time accepting that it was, he couldn't just stay in his pajamas all day. Moving mechanically, he slipped on the unfamiliar garments. The fabric felt foreign against his skin, the fit all wrong. He fumbled with the buttons of the blouse, his fingers clumsy and uncooperative. The skirt hugged his hips in a way that made him deeply uncomfortable. Avoiding his reflection in the mirror, Darius grabbed his backpack and headed downstairs. His mother beamed at him as he entered the kitchen. "Don't you look nice? That suit always did bring out your eyes." Darius swallowed hard, fighting back the urge to scream. "Thanks, Mom," he managed to choke out. She handed him a plate of pancakes, which he picked at listlessly. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible situation he found himself in. The sudden honk of a car horn made him jump. "That'll be Trey," his mother said. "You'd better get going." Trey, his best friend since childhood. Surely Trey would see that something was wrong. Darius grabbed his backpack and hurried out the front door, his heart pounding, but the sight that greeted him on the driveway stopped him in his tracks. Trey sat behind the wheel of his beat-up Camaro, but he looked different. His usually short, spiky hair now fell in soft waves past his shoulders. And was that makeup on his face? Darius approached the car cautiously, as if it might disappear at any moment. Trey grinned at him through the open window. "Hey girl, looking sharp, hop in, we're gonna be late." Girl? Darius felt like he was going to be sick. He slid into the passenger seat, the leather cool against his bare legs. "Trey," he started, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't you notice anything different about me?" Trey gave him a quick once-over as he pulled out of the driveway. "New lipstick? It looks great on you, by the way." Darius touched his lips reflexively, horrified to feel the slick texture of lip gloss. "No, that's not... Trey, I'm not supposed to be dressed like this. I'm not a girl." Trey laughed, a light melodic sound that didn't match his usual deep chuckle. "Oh, honey, did Naya put you up to this? I swear that girl and her pranks." Naya. Darius's girlfriend. Or was she? In this twisted reality, he wasn't sure of anything anymore. "No, Naya didn't." "Look, Trey, something is seriously wrong. When I woke up this morning, everything was different. My clothes, my room, even you. Don't you see it?" Trey shot him a concerned glance. "Are you feeling okay? You're acting really weird." Darius slumped in his seat, defeated. "I don't know," he mumbled. "I don't know anything anymore." The rest of the ride passed in silence. Darius lost in his thoughts as familiar streets rolled by. Everything looked the same, and yet everything was different. He felt like he was losing his mind. As they pulled into the school parking lot, Darius's eyes widened. Students milled about, heading to class, but it was like looking at a funhouse mirror version of his school. Boys in skirts and dresses chatted animatedly, while girls sported short haircuts and baggy jeans. "I can't do this," Darius whispered, his hand frozen on the door handle. Trey put the car in park and turned to face him. "Hey, what's going on with you today? You can talk to me, you know?" Darius looked at his friend, at least the person who was supposed to be his friend, and felt a lump form in his throat. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," Trey said, his expression softening. Taking a deep breath, Darius launched into his story. He told Trey about waking up in his sister's room, about his missing clothes, about how everyone seemed to think he was a girl. As he spoke, the words tumbled out faster and faster, his voice rising in pitch. When he finished, he looked at Trey expectantly, hoping for some sign of recognition or understanding. But Trey just stared at him, concern etched on his delicate features. Darius, Trey said slowly, I think you might be having some kind of breakdown. Maybe we should take you to the nurse. Hearing his name, his real name, sparked a glimmer of hope in Darius's chest. You called me Darius, so you do know who I really am. But Trey's frown only deepened. Of course I know who you are. You're Darius, my best friend since kindergarten. But you're also a girl, and you always have been. I don't understand what's going on with you today, but you're starting to scare me. The glimmer of hope extinguished as quickly as it had appeared. Darius slumped back in his seat, feeling utterly lost and alone. Come on, Trey said gently. Let's get you to the nurse. Maybe she can help. Darius allowed himself to be led out of the car and across the parking lot. His legs felt like lead, each step an effort. Students turned to look as they passed, some waving or calling out greetings. Darius kept his head down, unable to meet their eyes. As they approached the school entrance, a familiar voice called out, Darius, Trey, wait up! Darius turned to see Naya jogging towards them, and his jaw dropped. Gone was her long flowing hair and feminine attire. Instead, Naya sported a short, stylish haircut and wore a loose-fitting button-down shirt paired with khakis. Hey, babe, Naya said, leaning in to kiss Darius on the cheek. You look amazing in that suit. I told you navy was your color. Darius recoiled, stumbling backward. Naya, what happened to you? Naya's smile faltered. What do you mean, are you okay? Trey stepped in, placing a steadying hand on Darius's arm. She's not feeling well. I'm taking her to the nurse. I'll come with you, Naya said immediately, concern evident in her voice. As they walked through the halls, Darius felt like he was underwater. Everything seemed muffled and distorted. He barely registered the concerned looks from other students or the whispers that followed in their wake. The nurse's office was mercifully empty when they arrived. Nurse Chen, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, looked up from her desk as they entered. What seems to be the problem? She asked, rising to greet them. Before Darius could speak, Trey jumped in. Darius isn't feeling like herself today. She's confused about some things. Nurse Chen's expression turned serious. I see. Darius, why don't you have a seat on the exam table? Trey, Naya, you can wait outside. No, Darius blurted out, suddenly terrified of being left alone. Please, can they stay? The nurse hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right, if that's what you prefer. Darius perched on the edge of the exam table, his hands twisting nervously in his lap. Trey and Naya stood nearby, exchanging worried glances. Now, Nurse Chen said, pulling up a chair to sit across from Darius. Can you tell me what's troubling you? Darius took a deep breath, steeling himself. Everything is wrong, he began. I woke up this morning and suddenly the whole world had changed. I'm not supposed to be wearing these clothes. I'm not supposed to be a girl. None of this is right. As he spoke, his voice rose, bordering on hysteria. Nurse Chen listened patiently, her expression neutral. Darius, she said gently when he finished. What you're describing sounds like a form of dissociation. Sometimes, when we're under a lot of stress, our minds can play tricks on us. It can make us feel disconnected from our bodies or our identities. Darius shook his head vehemently. No, you don't understand. This isn't in my head. Everything has actually changed. Nurse Chen glanced at Trey and Naya. Has Darius been under any unusual stress lately? Any big changes or challenges? Naya stepped forward. Well, there's the big calculus test today, and she's been working really hard on her college applications, but nothing out of the ordinary, really. I see, Nurse Chen said thoughtfully. Darius, I think what you're experiencing might be a stress response. Your mind is creating this alternate reality as a way of coping with the pressure you're under. But it feels so real, Darius protested weakly. I know it does, the nurse said sympathetically. But I assure you, you are who you've always been. You're Darius Evans, a bright and capable young woman. This confusion you're feeling, it's temporary. We'll help you through it. Darius wanted to argue, to make them understand. But as he looked at the concerned faces around him, Nurse Chen, Trey, Naya, he felt his resolve crumbling. They all seemed so certain, so convinced of this reality. Could they all be wrong? Or was he the one who was mistaken?
I don't know what to believe anymore,
Darius admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Nurse Chen patted his knee reassuringly. That's okay. It's normal to feel confused and scared when something like this happens. The important thing is that you're not alone. We're here to support you. Trey stepped forward, taking Darius's hand.
Yeah, we've got your back, girl. Always.
Naya nodded in agreement. No matter what, we love you, Darius. Their words, meant to be comforting, only served to deepen Darius's sense of unreality. But he was tired of fighting, tired of trying to make sense of a world gone mad. Maybe it would be easier to just accept it, at least for now.
What should I do?
He asked, looking to Nurse Chen.
For now, I think it's best if you go home and rest, she replied. I'll call your mother to come pick you up. Take the day off. Try to relax. If you're still feeling this way tomorrow, we can look into setting you up with the school counselor.
Darius nodded numbly. As Nurse Chen stepped away to make the call, Trey and Naya enveloped him in a group hug. It's going to be okay, Naya murmured, stroking his hair. Darius closed his eyes, allowing himself to be held. He didn't know if things would ever be okay again, but for now, he was too exhausted to do anything but surrender to this new reality. 15 minutes later, Darius's mother arrived, worry etched on her face. She wrapped him in a tight embrace as soon as she entered the nurse's office. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice thick with concern. "Let's get you home." The ride home was silent, Darius staring out the window as familiar yet alien scenery passed by. His mother kept glancing at him, clearly wanting to say something but unsure how to begin. As they pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke. "Darius, honey, I know things have been stressful lately, but I want you to know that your father and I are so proud of you. You're an amazing young woman, and we love you no matter what." Darius felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to correct her, to insist once again that he wasn't a young woman, but he was so tired. "Thanks, Mom," he managed to say. Inside, his mother fussed over him, insisting he change into something more comfortable. Darius found himself back in his room, the room that was supposed to be his sister's, surrounded by unfamiliar possessions that apparently belonged to him. He changed into a pair of soft pajamas, trying not to think too hard about the lacy clothes he now wore. As he caught his reflection in the mirror, he paused. The face looking back at him was his own, and yet there was a softness to his features that hadn't been there before. His hair seemed longer, falling in gentle waves around his face. Darius touched his cheek, watching his reflection do the same. Was this who he was now? Or had it always been this way, and his memories of being a boy were the delusion? He crawled into bed, pulling the covers up to his chin. His mother appeared in the doorway, a steaming mug in her hands. "I made you some chamomile tea," she said, setting it on the bedside table. "Try to get some rest, okay? I'll be right downstairs if you need anything." As she turned to leave, Darius called out, "Mom?" She paused, looking back at him. "Yes, sweetheart." Darius hesitated, 1,000 questions on the tip of his tongue, but in the end, he only asked one. Can you just sit with me for a while?" His mother's expression softened. "Of course, honey." She settled onto the edge of the bed, gently stroking his hair. Darius closed his eyes, allowing the soothing gesture to calm his racing thoughts. He didn't know if he would ever understand what had happened to him, or if things would ever go back to the way they were before. But for now, he let himself be comforted by his mother's presence, drifting off into an uneasy sleep. In his dreams, Darius floated between realities. Sometimes he was himself, the boy he remembered being. Other times he was the girl everyone else saw. The two versions of himself blurred and merged, leaving him unsure where one ended and the other began. When he awoke hours later, the room was bathed in the soft glow of late afternoon sunlight. For a moment, disoriented from sleep, Darius forgot the bizarre events of the day. But as awareness crept in, so did the memory of his new reality. He sat up slowly, taking in his surroundings. The room still felt foreign, filled with possessions that weren't his, or weren't supposed to be his. But there was a familiarity creeping in at the edges, like a half-remembered dream. On the bedside table, next to the now cold mug of tea, sat a framed photograph. Darius picked it up, studying it closely. It showed him, or rather the female version of him, standing between Trey and Naya at what looked like a school dance. All three were dressed formally, wide smiles on their faces. Darius was wearing a stunning blue gown that matched his eyes perfectly. He stared at the photo, trying to reconcile the image with his memories. The longer he looked, the more a sense of cognitive dissonance grew within him. He could remember being the person in the photo, could almost feel the excitement of that night. But at the same time, he knew it wasn't real, or at least it hadn't been real yesterday. Setting the photo down, Darius swung his legs over the side of the bed. His bare feet touched the soft carpet, and he wiggled his toes, painted a pale pink. When had that happened? He couldn't remember painting his nails, and yet it felt normal. He stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of sleep. His body felt different, softer, curvier. It should have been jarring, but instead it was starting to feel familiar, like putting on a favorite sweater you'd forgotten you owned. Darius padded over to the full-length mirror on the closet door, steeling himself for what he might see. The reflection that greeted him was both strange and familiar. He was still recognizably himself, but with subtle differences. His jawline was softer, his eyelashes longer. His hair fell past his shoulders in gentle waves. As he stared at his reflection, memories began to surface. Memories of growing up as a girl, of shopping trips with his mother, of sleepovers with Trey where they painted each other's nails and gossiped about boys. These memories overlapped with his original ones, creating a confusing patchwork of experiences. A soft knock at the door startled him out of his reverie. "Darius!" his mother called. "Are you awake, honey?"
"Yeah, Mom,"
he replied, his voice higher than he was used to, or was it? "Come in." His mother entered, carrying a tray laden with soup and crackers. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, setting the tray on the desk. "How are you feeling?" Darius considered the question. How did he feel? Confused, certainly. Scared a little, but also strangely calm. "I'm okay, I think," he said slowly. "Things still feel a bit weird, but I'm not freaking out anymore." His mother's face relaxed into a relieved smile. "I'm so glad to hear that,
"Sweetheart, you had us all worried this morning."
Darius moved to sit at the desk, suddenly aware of how hungry he was. As he spooned soup into his mouth, his mother perched on the edge of the bed, watching him with a mixture of concern and affection. "Do you want to talk about what happened?" she asked gently. Darius swallowed, considering his words carefully.
I'm not sure I can explain it," he said. "It was like I woke up in a different world, one where everything was the same, but I was different."
His mother nodded encouragingly.
"Different how?" "I thought I was a boy,"
Darius admitted, the words feeling strange on his tongue.
"I had all these memories of growing up as a guy, and suddenly being in this body, in these clothes, it felt wrong."
To her credit, his mother didn't laugh or dismiss his experience. She simply listened, her expression thoughtful. "And now?" she prompted gently. Darius stirred his soup, gathering his thoughts.
"Now, I'm not sure. I still have those memories, but they're starting to feel less real, like a vivid dream that's fading the more I'm awake. And I'm remembering other things that fit with being a girl. Memory is a funny thing," his mother said. "Sometimes when we're under a lot of stress, our minds can play tricks on us. create false memories or twist real ones. Darius nodded slowly. Yeah, that's kind of what Nurse Chen said. But, Mom, it felt so real. It still does, in a way.
His mother reached out, taking his hand in hers.
I can't imagine how confusing and scary that must have been for you. But I want you to know that no matter what, you're still you.
Tears welled up in Darius's eyes, and he blinked them back. Thanks, Mom, he whispered. They sat in comfortable silence for a while as Darius finished his soup. As he set the spoon down, a thought occurred to him. Hey, Mom, where's Dad and Chloe? He hesitated on his sister's name, suddenly unsure if he even had a sister in this reality. A flicker of confusion passed over his mother's face. Your father's still at work, honey. He'll be home for dinner. But who's Chloe? Darius felt a chill run down his spine. My sister, he said hesitantly. His mother's brow furrowed. Darius, you don't have a sister. You're an only child, remember? The room seemed to spin for a moment as Darius processed this information. No sister. The room he had woken up in this morning, the one he had thought belonged to Chloe, had always been his. Another piece of his old reality crumbled away. Right, he said weakly. Of course. I don't know why I thought. His mother squeezed his hand. It's okay, sweetheart. Your mind has been playing tricks on you today. It's bound to be confusing. Darius nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He felt untethered, adrift between two realities that were increasingly blurring together. Why don't you take a nice hot shower? His mother suggested. It might help clear your head. And then, if you're feeling up to it, you can come downstairs. Trey and Naya called earlier. They were worried about you. I told them they could stop by after dinner if you were feeling better. The thought of facing his friends, or the people who were supposed to be his friends, sent a jolt of anxiety through Darius. But at the same time, a part of him longed for their familiar presence. Okay, he agreed. A shower sounds good. His mother smiled, gathering up the empty soup bowl. Take your time, honey. There's no rush. As she left the room, Darius stood and made his way to the ensuite bathroom. Another wave of disorientation hit him as he took in the array of beauty products lining the counter. Perfumes, lotions, makeup, all things that supposedly belonged to him. He turned on the shower, letting the water heat up as he undressed. Catching sight of his naked body in the mirror, he paused. The curves and contours were foreign and yet increasingly familiar. He ran a hand along his hip, marveling at the softness of his skin. Under the hot spray of the shower, Darius closed his eyes and let the water wash over him. As he massaged shampoo into his long hair, more memories surfaced. Giggling with Trey as they tried out new hairstyles. His mother teaching him how to shave his legs for the first time. Trying on prom dresses with Naya, both of them twirling in front of the mirror. These new memories felt as real and vivid as his old ones. By the time he stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a fluffy towel, Darius felt more grounded in this new reality. The panic and confusion of the morning had receded, replaced by a tentative acceptance. He dressed in comfortable leggings and an oversized sweater, the soft fabric soothing against his skin. As he ran a brush through his damp hair, he studied his reflection. The face looking back at him was his own. Not the face of a stranger, but the face he had always known. Or had he? Darius shook his head, pushing the doubts aside. Whatever had happened, whether it was some bizarre alternate reality swap or simply a stress-induced delusion, he couldn't change it. All he could do was move forward. Taking a deep breath, he opened his bedroom door and headed downstairs. The smell of his father's famous lasagna wafted up from the kitchen, making his stomach growl. As he descended the stairs, he heard his parents' voices, speaking in low, concerned tones. Just worried about her, his father was saying. Maybe we should think about talking to Dr. Patel again. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, his mother replied. She seems much better now. We'll keep an eye on things, but I think she just needs some time and support. Darius paused at the bottom of the stairs, touched by their concern. He cleared his throat softly, alerting them to his presence. Both of his parents turned, their faces breaking into relieved smiles.
"There's our girl,"
his father said warmly.
"Feeling better, Pumpkin?"
The nickname sent a pang through Darius's heart. His father had always called him that, even in his other memories. "Yeah, Dad," he said, managing a small smile. "I'm okay." His father enveloped him in a bear hug, and Darius melted into the familiar embrace. For a moment, it didn't matter what reality he was in or what gender he was supposed to be. He was just a kid being comforted by their parent. As they sat down to dinner, Darius found himself relaxing. The conversation flowed naturally, his parents carefully avoiding any mention of the morning's events. They talked about his father's day at work, about an upcoming family vacation, about the latest episode of a TV show they all enjoyed. By the time they were clearing the plates, Darius felt almost normal. The memories of his life as a boy were still there, but they had taken on a dreamlike quality, fading around the edges. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.